I don't even think we have confused crickets. They're so set in what they know that they're going to maintain their cricketdom.
BTWRLM223.
I keep saying knowledge is not going to cut it all by itself. You got to do something with that knowledge. And you got to do the right thing. So we have a continual analysis: is what are we doing, and is it correct? Can it be done more correct? And I don't know what more to say than that. It's going to take. I was just thinking before the broadcast, listening to the other things going on, that you have to create a group of people that can come together and start to function as a unit, no matter what your input is. And like I keep calling at the end of the broadcast about freedomsnetwork.com. There's a social network there that could be developed and used as a tool. We bring our strengths together and work on projects, or help each other work on projects, and we work at a distance and make that all work. But no, the crickets are not confused, apparently. They think they have it all together, and the silence is deafening. Keep on bringing things to try and show what's going to happen and maybe anticipate issues, and it seems to be brought up and agreed to, and then everyone has their opinion of it, and it continues. No one steps up to be the obstruction to any of it. This week, somehow I don't know. I've been coming along to show you in the notice they call the news. Even the fake news was notice. This is what I don't think people quite appreciated. We're being told a whole lot of things. If we are tending to try to find answers, not everything is useful to us. Behind the woodshed, it's useful only in the context of look at the target-rich environment. Look at what the enemy's doing. Look at what these people who profess to be authority, they're actually authorita, are doing. And wow, and I look at it and say, wow, look how amazingly we stand by and let it happen. We literally are being run down by insane people. And I don't know how that makes you more sane to let that happen. Some of this stuff is a little bit out of our hands, but in actuality it's not, because I'm finding as you get engaged, there's more things that can be done and more people pouring the work out and into the field, if you will, that becomes this ripple effect. It's not ignorable. And if you start to approach the problems more as I have seen, as we do, not just as I say to do, but as we do, we have a much better handle and a quicker handle on things. And really the problem is ignorance. I'm finding universally the problem is just a mass ignorance. And again, Thomas Jefferson said it, you have to educate the mass of the people. So we find ourselves in a mass ignorance, and so the answer, part of it, is mass education. Well, that can't really be done by just a few of us. And it certainly is not going to be done by many of us that are giving the wrong information. Or even questionable information that no one does and backs up and checks. And so we have things coming on us, and I just watch them keep on working. And I don't like to say this, but I have to. I want to remind everybody, the excuses just aren't working. I don't care what you use to not engage something. It's not going to work. We can be all high and mighty in our mind about how much we see and know and how aware we are, how awoke we be. It's useless. It's all nonsense, given you do nothing. Now, I've been talking about the things that we've been looking at. I've been doing this for quite a few decades. Lots of ideas have come and gone. The memory hole has a bunch of information filling it up. And so we talk from there as well. Things rise to the surface occasionally and keep to tell us the plan that's against us. Our problem is the plan. And we need to take that orientation, and we need to work out if it's a plan, it can be undermined. Because the plan that we see as a problem is not working for us. And that's on a major number of people. And yeah, I see that people would rather complain instead of really engage and learn how to engage and then engage. And this is not that long of a process. I mean, when you find yourself at a fire, you don't look around for the next guy to put the fire out. Well, unless you're the arson. I guess that thought quickly comes to my mind. And so it's pretty simple. You put the fire out. You do, as I've told you a long time ago, I told you had a fire going to be coming in from another property, going to take out a bunch of down firewood. That was going to burn up all this wood that was dropped and dried in the summer. No fire department. What do? Do I wait for the government? Or do I take my rights as a property owner or property having an interest in property, want to protect property and protect my neighbor? Or do I grab the tools I have at hand and go fight the fire? Well, obviously, anybody who has, I think, a caring mind or a responsible mind at all would have picked up the tools they had, whatever it was. And the tools I had wasn't out in the field, acres and acres. You don't have a water hose. It was a shovel and a weed whacker. So, I mean, I just jumped on it. I said, well, if I let that fire go, if I wait for the government to come do it or the volunteers, as good as they thought they might be, and I used to be a volunteer firefighter in the area, I'm going to have my property all burned up. And it comes into my property, and we're not going to stop it. And so, this is the conflagration that's against us in our society today. And I say our society. It's what we live in, and it's what we live amongst, and it's put on us. I don't care what side and what way you try to look at this. Some crime comes against you, and again, if you don't want to believe you have an obligation and duty, I don't know about you, but to stop it. But most normally people know that they must stop a crime against them. Otherwise, it gets worse, right? We see the ultimate lawlessness, and the professed law is imposed by is us. Again, the United States using a group of people, convincing them to push an ideology that's completely extreme, even to those that would believe it, and being used as a tool to destroy other people and other places. Is what's happening and happened in all your so-called civilized nations, and you just don't even recognize it. That it's moved to another level, and I was telling you about that. I was telling you how we've moved outside of law when it was announced by the biggest thug in the world that it was going extrajudicial. And I've explained all these things, and I hardly see any response about that. Not even a thought. I mean, it's okay an acknowledgement, and I see lots of people carry that with them, but it's not a thought beyond that and then into an action. So I've been exposing, and not to my singular, to me singularly, but just I'm trying to show you in the news how it's coming together, and I'm telling you about this technology, the technocrats, it's how the technocracy is moving along, how the material science is coming along to make it so that they are moving. This transhumanist agenda is moving on. It's the plan is the problem is our plan. If you don't see it as a problem, then you're not looking. And the technocrats use technology in order to advance this along. Now, and so moving into that, they've told us I've told you through them telling us in the blogcasters. If you go through all the links, they're giving us the clues now that all this is ready to be moved out. They're still talking in future, like it's not here, but I have a hard time believing what I know in military, military development. And I told you about that I was working more as the technician, working with an engineer that worked on a so-called secret, no one knew it, so I was helping him, a secret contract with a military development company on doing camouflaging, electronic camouflaging. That there's technologies that are in the works that no one knows about, that are working. And we see glimpses of it. I mean, this is 25 years ago I was working with that guy. Or not quite, a little bit later, maybe 20 years ago. And you've seen lots of stuff come out. It finally came out BMW was doing it. excuse me, Mercedes was the first to expose that to you. Those styles of things. So they're many years ahead of us in the system that has so-called money to run this around. So it doesn't matter whether or not it's fiat or not. It's what causes the world to work. So we have to have a different idea about this. It's not about that we know it's fiat. It's that it doesn't matter. It's the oil for the machine to continue to move. Because the entire thing is a big crime. So stop trying to think because you know that it's fiat currency and it don't pay for nothing, that it means anything. Well, it does pay for stuff. It's how it's the identification of a foreign jurisdiction right up around your ears. And you are duty bound to throw it off. That's not my rule. That's just the way nature works. That's natural law. Well, getting into this technocracy thing and how it's advancing and the notice that we're given about it all, good, bad, or indifferent, it's happening. And I'm not so sure that enough people really kind of care here. It seems like it's outside of us to do anything about it as well. The things I've been talking to, the military direction that all of this goes. But we now see another report giving us the notice that DARPA reveals $65 million Matrix program to plug soldiers' brains directly into a computer. Now, I could read all these things, and it's just a headline. But you can read the sourcing of it all, and I could do that, I suppose, but I'm not into that. These ideas that have been going on for years and years about DARPA, ARPA before that, this is back in the 70s, have been around. This is not even new stuff. And here, this editor's note here on this report is DARPA drops the pretense and admits the existence of these secret programs designed to create an army of half-human, half-machine super soldiers to fight in their phony wars. Transhumanism is real and coming to a neighborhood near you very soon. I've said it's already here. And so this is very much on track, but it's not a phony war. This is a real war against you, folks. Don't be lulled about that. The point is that it's someone making a report about DARPA coming up and saying, we want these half-human people. I'm going to point out, I think, a quick problem. They said that they want to tie it into the movie The Matrix. The Matrix is not a movie, but we're beyond that. They talked about plugging soldiers directly into a computer. Folks, I've just given you the technology in the last few weeks. There aren't going to be any plugs. If you haven't figured out you can charge your toothbrush without any wires to the toothbrush, you're missing the whole technology. You don't need to be plugged into anything. You just need to be around it. So we can go over to Tesla, and he showed you about all that, and fluorescent lighting at a distance and all that stuff. We can do all that. It's called radio waves. I'm impressed with Tesla, but there's some things that people overblow about Tesla as well. I'm not going to diminish his genius. What I'm pointing out, there's some big chunks missing out of what he was doing actually that allowed him to do what he did, that people divorce themselves to think like, well, we got super energy, we can get out of these things. And they completely forget a lot of some of his experiments had to be wired to a dam that created the power to do this. So that wasn't free energy. That was just converting energy and then utilizing it a different way. But this power, this radio waves, has been on for us for a long time. That they then they modulate these radio waves and they pass information. This is not even a secret. The problem was, how do you integrate it with an analog or a life being digitally? And I've given you all the news to us. They have the technology now. They don't need the wires. They don't need to make any physical connections. They can now incorporate this almost seamlessly into a body that's willing, and we know that the soldiers become willing. And they get told, like the jihadists, to go fight the good fight. And they are willing to do a whole lot. They'll allow them to be the guinea pigs that bring this technology on. It's pretty fascinating, how easily this stuff gets moved along. The Again, what do I talk about all this? It's here, folks. It's been here. The projects that are coming down. They're giving us notice of are this next phase where they don't. The technocrats will be put in the exalted place, and you think it's fairy tales, and you think you're going to have an opinion against it, and a lot of us aren't going to really be seeing the effect of this. And although we are starting to see it, it may not be quite as prominent. It's going to be for the next generation. I hear people, next generations. I hear lots of people saying and I've said this for myself. I had to correct this phrase for myself. I hear it coming out over and over again recently that the children are the future. Well, folks, they're not. We are our children's future. If we don't set the table for them now and correctly, they're going to be lucky to be eating from a table, let alone eating. Because everything that's going to be coming is not going to be determined by them, and we've allowed that. So we have a delusion that we're running against ourselves, and I've been trying to expose that and break through the resistance to that. You may hear it, you may agree with that, but then you won't take action somehow to stop things, anything. I don't know where you go, but on anything, any particular thing, just go somewhere, I guess, is for me, until I can see a coalescing mass. I don't know what to tell you. Coalescing mass is not as a mob, not as a riot, not as an Occupy, but as an non-dependent, critically thinking, responsible man or woman saying, I've just had enough here, I'm going to work to stop this, and I'm going to do what it takes, not make any excuses. But transhumanism has been the problem. It's the plan, folks. They're working to make, we have all the science, material science now, to make this transhumanism hybrid invisible. And so Big News Brzezinski, I think, wrote some information. He wrote a book. I think it was called The Technotronic Era. You might want to understand that that's a plan. I don't know how it became a plan. I don't know how these people get connected. I just see the evidence of it. I don't have the answers here. But this is a technotronic terror that's coming on us. It's a technotronic automaton that the technocrats are wanting to design to keep everybody. They will be controlled, and they will keep you in control. And you kind of look at that as, well, how is that even going to work? Well, folks, the technology is here to start to make it work, if it's not already, which I don't know. I see this technology they're telling us about. I think it's working. I worked in R&D. We were doing things, building things before they were something in the world. It's happening years and years before, and that was just that's in private sector. I've never been in the government sector, except for that intangible. Working as helping us an engineer to design something for camouflaging. That's as close as I've ever gotten. But that technology was years and years and years before you seeing it developed as a novelty in cars. And that wasn't even the good stuff. That was just the stuff they'll show you. So again, we don't know what's out there. But Big News Brzezinski was telling us that this was happening here. They wanted soldiers. The government is a terrorist. I've told you that. The United States government is the terrorist. It's a caucustocracy now. This Technotronics, this technocracy, is a psychopath. It's its own, if you will, artificial thing. I don't even want to say intelligence. It has no intelligence. It's just a cause, and it's got people to help advance it. And that's, again, the weak link. As much as AI might claim to be what it is, and it may be fast, and we may be seeing how it can beat people at games, there's things that we also saw in sci-fi that machines just can't do. And that's, I guess, what I've been trying to expose, as I don't even know what what I tell you is not planned. What I tell you is not formulated. It's just what comes from me to tell you. As I see this move on and try to get better at trying to explain it, I think this gets us a little bit closer. We're going to have to evolve beyond, not evolution, but we're going to have to adapt. and evolve beyond our own incapacities, even and despite the fact that computers run faster than we do in certain things. It's what I've been bringing to you behind the woodshed and looking at a problem and how to address it and address it better and doing it in a way you're not put in jeopardy. I think watching this DARPA, this is what kind of caught me, this so-called revealing of this DARPA project to plug soldiers' brains in. Folks, you're not going to know these people in the future. Remember, they make it obvious to us now to put the pressure and the thumb on it. In the future, they're coming as a secret weapon. Silent weapons, secret for the silent wars. The secret weapons for silent wars are these people that will be the hybrids that you won't know. This is the society coming on that's completely hierarchical, and you will not be part of that internal club. You're going to have to be able to defend yourself even against these so-called super soldiers, or super bureaucrats is what they'll end up being. Because if you see the model, they've already figured us out. We don't even know we live in an occupied territory. We live with an occupier in our land. We don't see the courts as that occupation. We don't see the judges and the bar association members as those occupying force. We don't see the system that they have made as a defect. We see it as something to embrace. We rail against it a bit. We're riled up against it a bit, but we don't address it and in any substantial way, and that's going to help that thing. It's moving into our minds are able to create materials that allow us to implement the plans of people that are being funded to do so, because that's the style of society that we've allowed. We had all the opportunity and obligation and duty to step up with a better plan, and nobody did. We're actually living in that felony I keep telling you that's consensus-based. It's the one with the best alternative that gets chosen. That's the one that works that out, except that you're not usually the one that starts the outcome definition to what's wanted, and that's something you have to interfere with. And you can, once you understand it. Big News Brzezinski, he was telling us a bit this Technotronic era, and there's going to be these soldiers DARPA's telling us about. It's not even new news. I'm telling you, don't disregard the fact of it. You already live in a society that isn't even under law. Now they go on, another report comes all at the same time again, and just pouring this stuff out on us. Controlling memory by triggering specific brain waves during sleep. So they're telling us that they've got a handle on this. Remember, they were telling us about the rat wagging its tail when a so-called human told him through a computer to do so. And I was telling you that's probably the rat telling the human to tell the rat only to wag his tail so that the rat didn't have to do anything other than that and embarrass itself. Was how I think these things actually roll out. That we were being told that the controlling memory by triggering specific brain waves during sleep is giving us an indication of how this non-plugged-in people, soldier, whoever, hybrids, are going to be able to be programmed. They're telling us it's only for memories or erasing memories. That should terrify you. That you understand now that a beam of energy modulated in certain ways can actually be put on you to affect you. Again, you can read about. I can read about it, or I just tell you that it's here. You can go to the Blogcaster and get the link and read it. And I don't know if no one's commented to me, so I figured it was the right decision. The Blogcaster only has, for the most part, now the link. My headings, when I put in after the broadcast, that come to me to put in to delineate the reports here that I'm trying to get through to you. And in a context of what I was telling you, the theme of the broadcast may have been, but I'm only putting the links now. I'm not even putting a copy. It still takes a long time, but I don't look for highlighted portions for you to read. I haven't got a comment back, so I suppose I was wasting my time before. But the links are there nonetheless for you to read what they're doing here. As a scientist of the Center of Cognition and Sociality within the Institute for Basic Science, enhanced or reduced mouse memorization skills by modulating specific synchronized brain waves during deep sleep. So there's the technique. What also got me, I started to watch this as I was looking through this article. They had a picture of a baby, and they have then a brain highlighted in graphic and some 3 circles with 3 different waveforms. And while I was reading the text, it didn't dawn on me, but it did. I mean, I started getting the syncing up with my mind about what they were doing, and something I've done on my own, and I've kind of mentioned it to you. Started to make itself known, and when I saw the graphics, it completely made it known. The way they're doing this is during slow wave sleep, groups of neurons firing at the same time generate brain waves with triple rhythms. Slow oscillations, what they call spindles, and ripples. Now, I'm not going to work any more on discussing this. What I'm going to point out to you, there's 3 inputs there of different frequencies. When you get down and see the picture, that's what it triggered my mind, because this, as I was looking at this, was something I worked on as a side experiment to because of my I was inquisitive of these things one day, working in a electronics lab with oscilloscopes and inputs and generation and resonance and all this other stuff. And I was looking for something, I was tracking something, at least represented by our instruments. I was looking at reverse time, for those of you that are kind of tracking a little bit of this, that at the time I had to do the same thing. I was using 3 and then 4 inputs into a 2-dimensional system called your oscilloscope, which has a 3rd dimension input regarding the way it handles electronic pulses, and it replicates that on a 2-dimensional screen. At one point, I was able to, and I'll just add this point onto this article, with 4-dimensional 4 different frequency inputs, like they're talking here, but in a very specific relationship. I was able to generate 3-dimensional pictures in a 2-dimensional frame. I'm going to suggest to you that's working into hologram area without the light splitting. And I can tell you that although the entirety of the display in forward time was mostly forward time, I was able to see a very, very small recursive cycle, very, very short time signal, that was reverse time. And I'm not saying I've seen and can do or do anything with that and time reversal and all. I'm telling you that with regard to our instruments, if it's true what I was looking at, it had to reverse time to recursively draw this thing in real time. And I needed to use the very same things that they did here, that they're telling you about today, that I believe at that time I was looking at a way to have signals, draw images in people's minds. That I think that's what they're talking about here. And if they're doing that, you're going to see the ability to have pictures drawn in your mind. You're going to be able to be imposed with pictures, with thoughts in your mind that are images that you think you're seeing, which is fascinating to me because I was able to mess with it in my own experiences and experiments. But I'll tell you, that's not going to be too much if you don't know that's what's going on. Or they use this technology. This is how they teach you. You physically think you've already relived it, and they just pump it to you. And I'm looking at waveforms right here that weren't identical, but they're very, very close to what you have to do in order to get this 3-dimensional representation in a 2-dimensional frame. And these people these psychopaths are working with this technology to make people better. And the thing I can tell you, that's like that best science. It's going to be based on their models and what they need, even though their models are made by insane people that are out of touch with a reality. Your reality will be dealing with their unreality. And it came out again today that there's due analysis. This climate stuff it has no basis in reality, just as I've been explaining for years, as others have been explaining for years, and yet it still is in the forefront of our societal mind and actions by the government. And we don't step up and say, wait, whoa, hold it, en masse, folks. We don't do this. We don't organize up on places like freedomsnetwork.com. No, we'd rather go to play games on with Farcebook and let them do their DARPA stuff. But let me get back. This was fascinating to me, actually. I'm actually kind of trying to keep it low key because this little thing right here was kind of a mind blower for me when I realized I've already been kind of messing with this, and they're talking to me here in this article saying they can actually wipe your memory or give you one. Now, I also was telling you that I had a problem in the 90s with my fever and my memory won't go away. It kind of spoke to me there, too. Did what happened to me in a fever act as a multi-frequency input to diminish my memory or make it the fog? Remember, I told you the memory was there. I just couldn't get at it. And that was the exasperating thing, knowing there's something there to remember but not knowing what it is. How did I even know that there was something there to remember? It would just drive me nuts, but I couldn't see it. I correlated that to this as well. Does what an analog fever, does it create frequencies in your mind that can erase or fog your brain? Just another thought. I don't know about that. I just thought about these things they have responses in the physical world. And so what can we translate that over to other things? I'm looking at science. Science is just so-called science today is just disappointed me beyond measure. We each are the scientists if we want to go back to that method, understanding we know nothing about this creation. We're just children in it. Fascinating, wondrous things happen beyond our ability to comprehend it. And yet we think we know so much. And we have people that think they know so much and they've studied enough to know so much. And like I was talking about, seeing a story about CERN. They just found a big heavy particle of some sort. I didn't even get into it. They gave them all these names, baryons or whatever. Folks, it just told me these people are a bunch of kids with toys because they're actually questioning whether there's things being developed that's outside of the theory that they're using, which means they don't know what they're doing. These are just a bunch of grown-up kids with big toys. And so when you have a toy, when you play in the street or in your yard with a toy, well, you're having you may learn some things about playing with it, but are you really learning anything? This is the state of, it seems, of our science, and it's accepted as reality, and it's absolutely not. Now, this is a story I'm telling you about how they get rid of your memory and take away and then give you one. As a mice, when I saw the waveforms they used, it rang really true, brought back a memory big time fast. And so I think there's a lot of validity to this, and I think it's way beyond what they're going to tell you here. And if that's the case, folks, you really can't disregard these stories about this hybrid human caucustocracy imposed beyond control and remedy, movers and shakers and deciders of what's happening. I was telling you that big data was going to be problematic. This is now a story coming out, military-industrial complex secret war for our data. If you didn't know there was a war, folks, there's another recognition of these very factual things that I could see coming out of the 90s, but didn't have a way to speak about it. And maybe it wasn't time either until here I started broadcasting just a decade later than that. But a lot of what I tell you today is what I researched and learned then that are just proved out today. So again, this Liber Code matter was watching the law that I learned, that I read in the Benedict on Admiralty Encyclopedia about occupying forces, and then recognizing your government was that occupying force. And then found out also on top of that there was numbers of occupations, one of which was the time of Lincoln. Lincoln was just a lawyer. And that there was an occupation of upon the Civil War that hadn't been removed. And I've had a couple people communicating with me, and I appreciate all your communications there about these. The question has been, well, where was was this the proclamation that ended the the martial law. I said, I don't know of anybody that's found the proclamation that clearly ended the martial law. We've had some pretty good researchers on this. I would have to include myself. I haven't found it. When I was talking more with Clint Richardson years ago, he couldn't find it. And he did an extensive write-up on all that. Other people have come forward. There hasn't been a clear proclamation. An implied proclamation is not a clear proclamation. And then the first rule is you knows them when you sees them. I sees them, folks. I don't know about y'all. So the war against us is not a question to me. Who? It can be a number of occupiers, but the worst one is the one that's willing to kill you for no good reason at all, or any reason that they make up. But the war is against us. I've been trying to convey that. We have multiple war fronts to be aware of and cognizant of and do what we can against it. Here's another one. Now people bringing it on. War profiteers. Remember, privateers in the Constitution are lawful, and if you're a neutral with the war or a letter of marque with that government as a privateer, you have the right and you are given the ability for its protection to be a pirate. War profiteers are finding the data business easy going. And why wouldn't it be? Again, Silent Weapons and Quiet Wars told us that's what's going to happen. They have wielded their unwarranted influence and applied their business model of causing and then profiting from insecurity and applied it to the digital age. The results have been more profit for them and less liberty for you. The problem is the plan, folks. So here it is, another acknowledgement. The article goes on and on and on. I don't even know. I read through some of the stuff and I don't remember when I get here on the weekend. By the weekend, there's important parts in here and there I could tell you about. But I don't know. If you're not interested, why? I'm telling you more the problem of this war against us, and we have to engage that war, or otherwise we agree with it. We agree, or we are prisoners to it, prisoners of war. And yet, those that are on the war against us, that claim to look like they're in our society, they're actually domestic enemies as well, notwithstanding the easy foreign ones you can see. They will come with colors of authority that can be readily destroyed if you are addressing that to engage that. That if you don't, you are walking with the ring in your nose to the problem against you. So they bring up in this article about the national security state. And I want to point out something to you that I've been trying to, I keep saying trying, but I have been telling you, whether or not it really sinks in that it's a thing we can even work against, or that we have to, or that I'm telling you you have to. The national security state always uses this national security color of authority. I've told you from way long back, because of what I learned way long back, and when I got to tell you all when I got onto broadcasting, that they went into the deepest. These people are not stupid. They went right to the deepest protection they could. Police powers is one. Another type of police powers is the national security, or the security of the state. And again, that's not the security of you. And so they went right in, and the courts, which are part of them, then bolstered that status. And so in looking at this through international law eyes, I realized that was the PowerPoint. And I was hoping in the 90s that a lot of people would have understood at least what I started to see and race the government to the police powers imperative. And hopefully that in that foot race, which I used to talk a little more of, we were in a foot race. I don't know who was going to win. I think we lost it, actually. The government got to the police power imperative first, and now you're getting flogged with it. Now, you were supposed to bring it behind the woodshed, and they're bringing you behind the woodshed. They're flogging you with this police power imperative. And then they went one step further to the national security imperative, and then they went again farther than that, and they took the nation and destroyed it in favor of abject extrajudicial action, completely militarized. And I've been telling you all this is the dynamic, and this is very formidable. But you've also heard me say that it's not not defeatable for a couple of reasons. One, wars have happened all the time throughout the human history. These animals that we tend to fall, our fallen nature tends to rise up all the time to come defeat us again in this revolution that keeps coming around the history repeating itself. Let's break the wheel, folks. National security becomes prevalent. This is what the model is. War profiteers or anybody that's using big data right now to move their own agenda or profiteering, their ability to continue to profiteer and then advance the military state. Forget this. I see so many people talking about the police state. Stop it. I see these people, they're so high prominent about, they speak pretty good, but they come up, we're in the police. No, folks, we're not a police state. That's policy state. We've been way beyond that. We're in a military state. There's a war against you, not just some policy bureaucrat with a badge. They mean to harm you to protect themselves. That's the national security. It's not a nation no more. It's a caucustocracy with the power to hurt you. And so the stories started popping out again these last few weeks. I've been trying to keep ahead of it. It's been more and more difficult, as I told you. We're back to the same stories I've been telling you about our condition. All of these things now people are starting to recognize are the problem. I'm telling you, it's the plan. The plan is in execution on top of that. You're so many steps behind in this race, it's scary. But I have a little optimism. I have quite a bit of optimism, though. It's defeatable. And we are going to have to, the only way, but we have to do it by getting together to do that. Not the way we've been doing it. And I've said that you attack the national security provisions where you can, or the police powers where you can, to say when they bring them up, they're either not that status, or what they might be that looks like it could be the status is a fraud that is being used to cover and color an actual other crime under color of that imperative, is what I've offered to you all in order to counter this. And that comes in many different forms. And one of them is the jurisdictional challenge I talk about, not the one you hear about making the videos about and all. No, there's very particular ways to make this challenge. These challenges, there's many of them in the jurisdictional. The authority challenge, what we call authority. Jurisdiction is the power to hear and decide something. You make the challenge against them to hear and decide a subject matter condition, complaint, event, an issue. They call that an issue. But there's a war. People are profiting from it. This is the worst. This is feeding into the worst of so-called human nature. And it's apparent now. And they're using national security, the highest cover of that can be used. And it's, again, we're in the silent weapons, quiet wars matter. We're in a war. We're in a data war. We're in a digital war. We're in an analog or biological war. They're now melding the two. They're going to make beings that transition between two realms, if I can say it. They're all this realm, so don't get too weirded out. They're here. We created both of them. Be careful not to divide your mind and say, well, they're different. No, they're the same. I've been offering answers, if I can call them answers. They're ways, again, the word in your mouth. What are you going to say against the oppressor that's coming in the future to be so much more capable than you are, given they can do what it looks like they already can do, program a man or a woman to access databases that you don't have access to, and counter whatever you think you had in your indignance against it. I'm suggesting to you can do much better with that, even without the knowledge of that database. And if you don't understand the natural law, and then the reality law, and then the law they're putting on you, and you don't quite get a handle on that, you're not listening to what I'm saying to you. And then give up some of it, because not to them, to some force that's there, that's the dynamic of which has had to make it come here, and allow something to speak to you that's the proper thing, and to be able to discern when it is the proper thing speaking through you to counter that. You don't start engaging this in earnest your life is going to be what it is, and you're going to get out with the suffering you allow. Otherwise, you're going to be a counter force and a power that's being used to counter this evil that's coming onto us. And the only way we get to do that is to face it. And I tried to bring you things. There's quite a few times I've been into the chats, and I'm trying to figure out. I don't have many examples. It's kind of like telling jokes. I don't do that. I don't recall sometimes really, really well. I just have the overall idea. And so it's a little vague, but the overall idea in the chats will be someone will make a comment, and I'll respond to say, well, you don't approach it that way. You have to approach it a different way with this angle, if you will, this other thing to do what you want to do. Let's say get to the jurisdictional challenge. You have an officer that knows the law better than you, even though he's then also given license to violate it, and he's still okay. I've given you suggestions on how to even defeat that, and you don't have to know all the law. All you need to know is the law you need to know. Let me give a for instance that is hypothetical. I'm making this up, but it's going to be think about it in real, if it's really happening, and how would this work? That you know, without being all braggadocio about what you already know the system works on fiction. It works on these names. You know they're legal entity names, that they're not really men and women. You know that, but you don't profess that. You just know it. You hold that inside. And I'm going to take what we do now and I'm going to apply it to a cop on the street that this happens in the future. You got this hybrid soldier that wants to ask you a question. And I'm going to take what we're doing today and apply it to that moment. What if I told you about, do it after the fact, how to identify the person they're calling you out or asking you to call out doesn't exist? How did I show you how to prove a negative? Do you remember that, folks, in the past broadcast? What did I tell you? You look at their jurisdiction, you know their database, you know that the database holds legal entities, you know that's the only person subject to that jurisdiction, and you know you're a man or a woman, not in that system. What did I say you can prove right off the bat? And if this officer has ties to, he's connected to this database, you can short-circuit him or her. Not that I think it'll cause smoke, but you've caused a problem. Would be to do what? Would be to challenge that he's asking a question for somebody that's relevant to his database, relevant to his jurisdiction. And you'd ask him to do what? You'd ask him to check the Secretary of State's database to see if you exist as a legal entity, subject to his control or her control. Now, I don't know if a lot of you just did the thought process there, and I'm not only talking in a very short amount of just as an example here, conjectural as it is. I think if you run your mind through that, and he or she, this hybrid, has a database in his mind or her mind that goes directly to that and knows that because that's the law, and it's supposed to be a law officer under cloak of a superior soldier. J. Dredd, we have in the BTWRLM chat. J. Dredd, Judge Dredd. Okay, Dredd. We're going to move it into the movies, and now you're going to have to answer me in truth. Well, where's the database that says you have jurisdiction over me, a man or a woman? Will be the same answer in the future as it is right now. And you're going to be up against the same problem. Is J. Dredd actually lawful? Or is he just the color of authority to hide his criminalism? Okay, so there's a potential imperfect solution. Why is it imperfect? Because we don't know how true law is going to be where they do recognize it. Because if there is no law, you are just going to be subject to the whim of whatever is against you, whether that's a hybrid or whether that's just a bureaucrat with all their human frailties and not able to impose upon it the database that you know sits there that you don't have to speak to now. You just have to know what you know. You just have to know enough to know what you need to know. I've been trying to explain that to you all and not make it real complicated. The concepting is a little more complicated because we are that ignorant as a people. We're that uneducated, as Thomas Jefferson said, we would be if we're not educated. And liberty is lost, if I use that word loosely. So here's, again, and it's only one. There's many, many more we could go through on how in the field, as I say, it's a point of first contact, and it always will be. The point of first contact against this authority, however powerful, will be to cause the actual intellectual challenge and consequence. And you will be challenging their moral authority, and the hybrid is going to have to look at that. And that's just on this legal entity side. You may have been a criminal. You're not going to get out of that. You did a crime. They'll be able to tell you that real quick. So this isn't like a blue ribbon metal, answer to you to go create crime in the future because you're a man or a woman. No, this is to try and counter the organized criminal war syndicate that's come up around you. I've been attempting, I say attempting now, not that I haven't. The attempt is to get you to respond to that. And I don't know that I'm doing such a good job. And that bothers me a bit. But I'm not taking it as a harm. That's on y'all that don't start getting this. Or just thinking you know a whole lot and you got it figured out. You don't. You just don't. I know that, and I don't know how else to say that, then you just don't. National security is going to be the worst one. Just so that you know, it's not just off the top of my mind. When I was looking through mining law, I looked very carefully for these exceptions, savings clauses, these preservations, exemptions, exclusions, all in the statements. The provisos, provided that. I look at all those things. I also look at the direct law that says how important mineral extraction, development and extraction is. It rises to a national security level. There's actually a statute, a set of statutes over the level of use of land, of soil for mineral extraction and development. It's a national security level imperative. Now, who cares? Well, when I'm up against someone who's asserting a national security imperative, I need to match that imperative, don't I? I've told you this before. When you're in a takings condition where the Constitution provided the government could come and take your property, as long as it provided due process and compensation. So you heard that adultery coming out of the gate. But when they come after you, they have to show, these people, these bureaucrats, these caucusocracy decision makers, the psychopaths, they have to show actually not just that they want the land, that they're going to put it to a better and higher use and benefit than you are using it to the same benefit, to the same society. And so when they come in with the national security imperative, you match it with another with an equal imperative, and then it's a matter of whether or not your imperative actually trumps, not the president, but the verb, trumps the governmental imperative. It just so happens mineral extraction and development is one of the highest, if not the highest, uses of soil that can be had for the purposes of defending the nation. Without minerals, your armies go nowhere. Your defense is nowhere. Is then related over to 6 statutes, 3 of which we use to prove the point that they admit to that. The decision makers, these policy makers, these congressional critters that are allowing these privateers because they don't legislate to stop them. Don't ever forget that. That's how you also know they're all criminals. There's no legislation to stop this by either funding or just outlawing it. And I've already told you that would be impossible under the Constitution for privateers because the government's used that as an out to defend itself. So we bring up a police power imperative in our defense that we benefit to that system. This is akin to making it look like you are in war, in a wartime, as a neutral. to that power. I've told you all of this over time, and I guess I'm being more pressed to explain now on these points how these things are rolling down on us. There's no joke about what I've been telling you. You have better get this understood. You think that your problem is just about the Fed? You're not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. That's kind of been it's all been inert. And we found that out when the derivative. If we didn't had a clue before, the derivatives problem in 2008 that became the stinking abyss, that became the shining beacon of all monetary creation. If that wasn't a clue to you that your Fed is irrelevant to this problem, that we got to start focusing on the people that are making and allowing this to happen, and the processes to execute upon it, then you're missing it. And that's not going to happen all by itself. These Genghis Khan hordes are going to stay here as long as you continue to let them. So I wanted it's just coming out. War profiteers are in the data business. All right, that's just about every corporation that you know about that's into the data field, the big data, which is just about all the big ones, the multinationals for sure. It's it's worldwide. And I just then move on here. The military, it uses tools. It uses we found the SNSA, the CIA, this war against you, hacking your systems. The corporations build systems that are hackable. They don't really fix it. Gets us to the idea that you want to start plugging into these silent web, quiet wars, plugging into the system, plugging into these facilities that allows them to make it easy for them to do so. It's not even a question now. We see Windows as malware, and again, critical flaws are found in Windows NTLM security protocol. They're asking us to patch now. I don't even know if I can even trust all of that. The point is that you are in this hybrid human animal thing, technocratic soldier. What system? Technotronics is all over this thing. It's like some thing out of Disney World. It's animatrons, things that even Tesla spoke about doing. Well, it's in our face all around us, and they're saying, "Oh, we got systems, digital systems that we have to continually patch, like some leaking rubber raft." That's your future. Now, I don't know if the government, the DARPA, has better. It occurred to me you'd have to have a complete different system running on different type of hardware, running its own system that no one really knew about it in order to be able to have a system that would be very difficult for you to understand or hack. And there would have to be there's a whole other world to be in, another digital system out there that would have to be created that nobody knows about. That would be the thing that would be safe, that I think could exist. I don't know if it does or not. But they give us this stuff. And these same, remember, they're going to be these soldiers, these Technotronic and automatons are going to be typing into the same system that's hackable. So even if you had the best system in the world, the best overseers, the best, most benevolent despots ruling over you, their automatons get hacked, and whatever I'm telling you is out the door. Whatever you thought was going to be organized and situated even to someone else's plan is out the door. And the problem is that the technology then is not the answer. And so let me get back to what I didn't finish saying. So this digital interfacing with these hybrids, or anybody even with their phone, they can do it by fingertip to get the knowledge they need as a law enforcer, as some bureaucrat, can be circumvented. All their AI power could not circumvent the fact, in fact, they get to it a lot quicker, that the so-called human cop now can't do and is getting excused. The AI automaton soldier, who will be looking like your local friendly police officer or police officer, will have to come quicker to terms with the fact that it does not have the ZIT, does not have authority over men or women, only legal entities. And the AI can be subverted by looking at that fact. And you don't need to be faster thinking than to know the fact. You have an instantaneous response that responds in the way that you're meeting them at the point of first contact. So, in some regard, if we're going to go there, let's anticipate the future. How do you respond to this Technotronic soldier that looks like a law enforcer that comes to you to make an accusation? And whatever has been hacked or whatever wrong, the facial recognition or whatever they think they thought that you were is not. Or it's that digital person that they've created that doesn't exist actually, that you're not either. If you don't know what I'm telling you, you wouldn't have a way to talk to that. And if you did, that thing would have to identify that you aren't what they said you were. It doesn't matter how fast AI is at that. In fact, it's going to work counter. You actually might get out of the problem pretty quick if you understand how this starts to work, instead of living in your opinions about what you think you know and how you know it, or just casting it all into the wrong against you and just say, oh, it's all just junk, or curse at it, or whatever you all want to do. The fact is, it's an active part of where you are, and you're going to have to deal with it. It's crawling out of that swamp. It's the stinking abyss that's been up around you. I find it fascinating. People have opinions about this wall Trump wants to build, but they're entirely silent about the walls built up around them and holding them captive right now. It's fascinating to me. Oh, you'll scream up in the sky around the walls that are built around you. Scream up how bad they are and how rotten the people are that put them around you, but you won't start chipping at the foundation in order to topple those things. And recognize you were that ignorant all your life, even with your knowledge and your awakening, to not even understand to start chipping at the foundation that was built in those walls. You'd rather just complain about it. So this bunch of links keep coming in. We're back to that military consequence I keep talking about, and want to those of us, and now I'm reminded as I get to this point, Solomon used to call into Freedom's Network, to Freakers Ball, the Freakers Ball on Friday night, and then he had to stop. He called in to Grimner, I guess on a private call, and Grimner recorded it. And if you go, I don't know where it's all at. I found it. The link I got was at the YouTube for the Real Liberty Media YouTube account. You may want to listen to 5 minutes of Solomon explaining his concurrence and his new findings about this, what he understood is the military consequence, how he understands it, that he would always talk about in his proofs, that he brought up some information that are now the state secrets thing that's corollary to the national security imperative. That becomes very difficult to deal with. And I don't know if I fully have an answer, but there is a way through the way I've analyzed the national security, meeting a national security with the national security to address the state's secrets, I believe. But I think if I tracked down by some information Solomon was talking about on that recording, a web page called the Freedom Articles that spoke, at least in a lot of the content he was mentioning. And so what I found interesting is on their header, their tagline is "Get a dose of the truth." And I don't know who Freedom Articles is. I don't know where they exist. I've never seen them before. But one of my tags was actually created by Rex Brocky when I was on Revolution Broadcasting Network, my first broadcast network, and I think he came up with getting the dose of reality, the hard but necessary dose of reality. I found the dose of the truth pretty interesting to come off this page, and it's talking about consistent things that I do, and then adding essentially the state secrets privilege, which is something you'll come around. It's what this section of code for the mining actually speaks to in its that we bring up. It's underneath the national security is the state secrets 1947 law, I think it was. This article starts out, the state secret's privilege is the cunning way military intelligence complex shields its secrets from the judicial branch and achieves undeserved legal immunity. Eisenhower famously referred to the military-industrial complex in his outgoing speeches, but these days the dark heart of the deep state or shadow government would better be called the military-industrial complex. The matrix, the matrix soldier, the matrix or entrenched system that surrounds us cannot change with the election of Trump or a new leader unless many determined steps are taken to dismantle the sprawling MIC, military-industrial complex monster. The MIC has unprecedented and highly consolidated power in its hands that comes from monitoring, surveilling, and spying upon almost everyone in the world. Get this context, folks. This is mind-boggling to me. I don't get it, but they're doing it. The world, folks. Even when it is challenged, the executive branch of the United States government to protect MIC invokes the state secret's privilege to prevent legal cases of being heard in court. Well, I've told you and shown you those courts are incompetent. So those aren't an expectation for me, but it did bring up the concept again and again that I bring up. It's going to take a plan against it. It has to determine steps to dismantle this thing. And this is not just the only, that's only talking military-industrial complex. It's more and beyond all that. We've allowed this monster to be developed, and we exist inside it, and allowing it to be working, and we don't have the first clue how to address it. And what I've been offering all this time is how you locally start to learn how to address locally take smaller bites out of the problem to learn how that'll amplify into getting bigger bites. And if we were all beginning to start to do that, we would start to integrate our effort together non-dependently on our own cause, and we would all then be training ourselves on the more effective ways to start to dismantle all of these things that we can find, or a lot of them that I can see. So I want to thank Solomon for calling and let us know he's all great. From what I gathered, he may still be listening periodically, if nothing else. Thank you for letting us know. I do appreciate the shout out also, and hearing that you're okay, even below the standards of a hobo. Don't despair. Keep plugging away. Something happened. I don't know if I got the place right. Why you went? If you went so far south during the winter, I'm not so sure about that. But not a hobo does that. Maybe that's the problem. But Solomon did call, give us his insight. It leads to this. What I could find, it leads to this article. There's some other sub links that you want to go to. You want to get yourself familiar with this. This is one of the major difficult problems, but I believe it's a self-inflicted wound, and I believe the Congress has every ability to do whatever they can do things in order to constrain it, that it doesn't have to go to a corrupt judiciary, which wouldn't protect it anyway, because that's part of the system that wants to continue the destruction, the control, whatever it does. I don't even get it. I don't understand the purpose. I guess you have to be that fallen to appreciate it. I don't. All I know is I see it, death and destruction wherever it goes. And maybe worse, I don't know, maybe lingering sufferance, I don't know. But here's another article for you to read. It talks to the state secret privilege. You have to understand how this dynamic works in order to you need to think on this if you intend to do it. You can apply these types of things to a lot of other areas. It's no different than a FOIA that's turned down, and they give a reason. There's a whole bunch of reasons they can turn down a FOIA, but if you understand the mentality behind state secrets, you can start working to think about how you even interfere with that, and it ends up being jurisdictional. It ends up being extensions of authority. And why I keep focusing on these things, and that runs down to whoever you talk to. Those things are always in everyone who talks to you so-called officially. There's always some authority that they're bringing. Now it's up to you to prove. They rebut the presumption. Even prima facie in the statutes. That's just a rebuttable presumption. That's a statement that they make for the courts to take on as a presumption of what is. when the certain fact is alleged. It doesn't mean it can hold up. It's prima facie that something happened, but that's rebuttable by better evidence, real evidence, not opinion. And so this, when you start seeing it's working like this, it's more fluid than what it seems to be, except at the point of the gun and the willing of the one who's wielding the gun to shoot you. That's just a criminal mind. They're just a criminal. There's no, it might be insane, so there's not even remedy against that. They're just a criminal, insane mind. I mean, they would just put that one in a rubber room and not in a prison. Like, I guess they believe that the insane one is already in their own prison. I guess maybe they are. And how did that get caused? Well, we can see that they can actually program. They know how the frequencies work to program. If they can take away your memory, and they say they can't put memories in, well, they certainly took one away. That's like putting one in. It's a negative memory. Causing them enforcing a memory, that's putting something in. So we talked about epigenetics, real-time changing, folks. This is not like they thought over eons that you change. You adapt to your environment, whether it's physical, scientifically physical. Your response to the environment. This is a natural response. The chemistry in your environment, the psychological inputs that you get. You don't think there's frequencies going in your mind when I'm talking right now, even just the speakers. See, there's this energy going into all this. We have this epigenetic, this real-time changing of our DNA, our adaptation in real time or in short generations, not over eons, that I don't think that people appreciated this when I started talking or bringing it. I think I started to actually develop it more openly when that ant colony story came up. And I said, here, they're talking about you, folks. This is why, and I talked about it because I'm certain that that's going on, not as a question. It's not some wild-haired idea I can relate to somebody else that's also saying the same thing that I've already figured is going on. Real-time changing in your DNA is not... I don't know why more people didn't just blow up on that one and just really concerned. It's happening to you now in your food, through your medicines, your pharmaceuticals, your environment, your air, your water. All that stuff is physically changing you. And it's physically changing how you think and what you're... Listen, we saw it in what was the dragonfly. They changed the genetics to receive the technology, digital technology, to plug into the organism. If you didn't appreciate the real-time nature of this condition, that we adapt in real time, you're missing how they're really coming after us. And they do this dark DARPA stuff underneath this state secret privilege, and it is now oozing out of the stinking abyss to envelop everyone's life around the world, even though DHS and CBP admit they have no legal authority to access American social media accounts. See, they're doing this without authority, and the system is set up to make that so, and we can go in, and that's why we have to go in and make a notice of it that's not an opinion but a record about how this isn't working. Now, DHS and the TSA and all this, I told you, they're agencies. They're dealt with on an agency side. Somebody needs to involve themselves on the agency side and be a thorn in these people's side to bring up these kinds of concepts that I'm talking about, that they believe they're bringing up the national security issues and then keeping information you from by state secret. And yet when you look at the TSA and then their immigration Title 8 laws, it's not applicable to normal Americans, men and women anyway, only the foreign nationals. We talked about that last week. Now, if it's only over foreign nationals, and now they have evidence in this article that you'll get the link to, that they admit, they state from their own documents, which you put in your bag of law and facts and proofs and their admissions, that they don't have legal authority to do any of these things. And we also know that Roberts and Supreme Court, they unanimously decided that your phone is now off limits. If you now put a bullet point of these facts on a list of paper and then approach a TSA and DHS, say, well, you just admitted you had no legal authority. How are you not liable to a remedy? Start your record to start your imposition there. Start to get the record for you, if nothing else, of the fact of the violation. And people say, well, that's not going to do anything, or it's okay, or whatever. It is doing something. You're taking responsibility to more effectively address a wrong that you were not practiced in doing, that you hadn't cognized in your mind how even to do it, that I'm telling you, once you start to do that, you then develop internally tools that fortify and magnify that in you wherever you go. Because once you start to do it, things unfold before you. And you'll get insights that come from outside. I'm not talking the internet. I mean your private thoughts sitting in a chair thinking about this thing. How do you resolve this problem? Things will come to you that come from outside of you that will be very valuable, that if you don't get. It's that simple. DHS has recently expanded its searches to electronic devices, eliminating most of its adherence to the Fourth Amendment process. Okay, I can go through all that. We will see a story develop. They're explaining themselves they don't have authority. What I found interesting here was more of a what do we do in the interaction. First, it's interacting. Well, how do we make ourselves a pain to them as well? I thought I found a little bit of an interesting, I don't know what's going to help you, but it'd be an interesting place to start, again, keeping the other side off balance. It says here the DHS had responded to Senator Ron Wyden's questions about the warrant requirement for border electronic device searches. And the DHS responded by saying, U.S. border officers aren't allowed to look at data stored only in the, quote, cloud, including social media data when they search the United States travelers' phones. United States travelers' phones. Customs and Border Protection acknowledged in a letter obtained Wednesday by NBC. Now, I'm going to focus on this and I'm going to move on. Just a couple of interesting little things that I would just do just to stick it in their face. First of all, I'd want to know about this U.S. travelers. What is the other names that the U.S. so-called U.S. traveler is? Are you someone else's traveler? Are you possessed by the United States? Well, if some of you have done the study, you'll know that you may be possessed by the United States. There's a whole lineage of statutes that will prove that. And then once you see that, then you know what to say to make a distinction. But U.S. travelers, what are all the other names that are tagged to that? I'd want to know that, first of all. But then it said something about that any data stored only in the cloud. In the cloud. Well, that's another fictional place. It's just this digital thing, isn't it? And we're talking about data. And then I read this story here. Let's move on. But don't forget about that. It's illegal for them to take this data in the cloud or the social media or over U.S. travelers. I'm going to tell you it's illegal to take. You'll read the story. They're only supposed to get information from foreigners. And what I was suggesting to Gary L. to make his summary list of the things the law is supposed to be focused on, relevant to, that he is not that if he travels. And so he gets that worked out before they go, but wherever they're traveling to. And the bottom line is that what impositions are required that are the least burdensome to still do the object. Well, if you're not even if you're not a foreign national, there's nothing they can impose that's least burdensome than nothing when you are going through. But they are now moving on because no one's stopping them. Like I'm asking somebody step up. Hundreds of people, thousands should be stepping up just to stick it in their face. Homeland Security says Americans now who don't, this is a title, so I don't know what their actual statement is, who who don't want faces scanned leaving the country shouldn't travel. Congress allowed the government to scan faces of foreign nationals to keep track of visa overstays, but now that's set to be extended to Americans, worrying some privacy advocates. So what does Americans mean? Are they those U.S. travelers? Are they another group of U.S. legal entities only, not men and women actually traveling? These things can't be left as a question. Homeland Security advice for millions of Americans traveling overseas who don't want to end up in its facial biometric database is simply not to travel. And a lot of people say, well, I won't travel anyway. Well, folks, you're just giving in, first of all. Secondly, they're not supposed to be extending it to Americans, are they? Is Congress allowing that? Is that constitutional? I kind of doubt it. This is a policy decision for what I can tell. But they're saying they can dictate to you your travel. I thought travel was a right, folks. On its face, this is nonsense, but this is what they keep pressing. There's war profiteers that keep pressing the government for the bottom line, which is what the United States government is all about, the bottom line. And you can sit there and complain or don't use the right to travel or don't address this and let them keep getting on with it, and they'll get a buy. They'll take this one too. Your right to travel, and I'm not talking about the highways now. There's a whole other study of international right to travel. It's also tied into the passport, and the status is there, and that's another obscuration. But that if you aren't reading about it, then you're just you're spouting without any. You're a hypocrite. I'll just put it that way. You're a hypocrite. There's real things to study here, not opinions. There's real things to do if you really want to say you are free and you are law abiding. In other words, that you will not agree with the violation to someone else or yourself as a criminal act. You just become the accessory to the criminal act. So the Homeland Security is going to up the ante. They're saying all Americans who don't want a face scan can't travel. Now, what authority are they using for that other than just brute force, fear, and imposition that y'all don't address? And I think it's completely addressable. There's nothing underneath the law for foreign nationals that allows the policy to extend to so-called Americans and interfere with their right to travel. Interfering with their right to travel is not the least needful imposition on the right in order to execute upon the law, which doesn't pertain to Americans at all. And in the process, understand what I've told you before, that they may consider you the enemy combatant, and that truth will have to come out of their mouth. And until it does, they can't continue that. They can't conceive of it. They can tell you, and they have the memo to prove it, but that would then become public knowledge, and you'd be the one to have exposed it if they did that. And we'll never know until someone steps up. So here we have big data. They're attempting to get more. They want facial recognition. They're doing their databases. They're going through private companies. They've admitted, at least social digital stuff, they don't have a right to the cloud. My thought on this facial recognition, okay, and for some of you that don't want to go through the more formal record-making side, maybe why don't we just, we'll have behind the woodshed clouds hats that you'll wear on your head, and it'll be like a puffy cloud. It's made of material you can see through, but it's a big puffy cloud you wear on your head. And then you tell them, with this little letter before, that they can't see any data in the cloud, and what they want to get in your face is data, when they get in your face, that the cloud protects you from the requirement of the facial recognition. How about if we do that? I'll just start, like I said, I'll do the buckets of sand. For those of you that will just carry the bucket of sand, for those of you that want to always stick your head in the sand, we'll have the behind the woodshed bucket of sand. You can do that. Now we'll have the behind the woodshed cloud cover. It's a hat that puts your facial data in the cloud where they say they can't touch it. Smart device breaks up domestic dispute by calling the police. Another thing that came up, big data, fascinating what they do, what people plug into, what I told you it was going to be used for, and now we start to see the reasons and what it does. Right in your home, we've heard other stories like this. We're gradually learning the smartphone devices can be quite valuable for police. Well, you wouldn't gradually learn if you listen behind a woodshed. You'd have been told a couple of years ago at least. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but where is everybody, folks? That's obvious. It's laid out for us to do and look at. Look at all this stuff. Our phones. People, look what it did with the phones. You don't think the smart devices of the phone were gradually learning about this danger? We're looking at as a society that's completely clueless. They got their head in the cloud and don't know the government can't see you there. Following a recent case in the which Amazon handed over data from its Echo device to police investigating a murder, a smart device called the police when a couple was allegedly involved in a violent domestic dispute. According to ABC News, officers were called to the home outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, this has got the heart of the beast, I think, beats in Albuquerque somehow, for some reason. I just get this impression. This week, when a smart device called 911, the smart device called 911, and the operator heard a confrontation in the background. Police say Eduardo Barro was house sitting at the residence with his girlfriend and their daughter. Barrows allegedly pulled a gun on his girlfriend when they got into an argument and asked her, "Did you call the sheriffs?" A smart device in the home apparently heard "call the sheriffs" and proceeded to call the sheriffs. A SWAT team arrived at the home, and after negotiating for hours, they were able to take Barrows into custody. So, this is showing you the need. Everyone's happy that this was resolved. This is another domestic dispute. The woman and the child didn't get killed, and I suppose maybe that's a good thing there that happened. But there's a little tagline: your smart devices are listening and functioning already. Community care. You're not quite getting this. As soon as that goes out, we're going to have a SWAT team show up. Now, you know that they don't mention this guy got shot. I wonder why. Most other ways, at times, this guy gets shot. Oh, so I suppose this is just a story to get you to believe, that's going to be a good thing in the future. No, this is going to be community care, and you're going to become a problem. They're just going to get rid of you. Your smart devices are going to be listening to everything you do. And it gets even better. This hybrid soldier, you think they're going to make to someone else, it's not going to be for you. I told you it's all the electronic stuff that you give, that you buy, all the things that you bring into your life that you don't know are so-called smart, the S-M-A-R-T. It's not intelligent, but this is what they're trying to get us to believe. This is the technocrats, technocracy in our face. Wearable device reveals consumer emotions. Pre-crime pops up really quickly here in my mind, if it didn't get to you. This is going to be the technology tapped into that hybrid soldier. Humans experience a range of emotions in response to products and experiences on a daily basis. Well, this is really innocent, isn't it? Shoppers may get excited for certain brands and they then overwhelmed by choices. Audience members may oscillate between apathy and engagement during performance. Boy, I need that one. Behind the woodshed, we need that, folks. I need to hear your apathy so I can figure out a way to talk to your engagement. And I'm not going to bring in no rings. Children can become frustrated, bored, or entertained with learning a new subject. Using wearable stress sensors, analytics, and other technologies, MIT Media Lab spin out Empath. Empath, get it, folks, Empath is able to pinpoint the exact moment consumers feel these subconscious responses. This is through somebody interpreting you. Is it true? Well, my question about the jurisdictional name of legal entities will show that it may not be. So they're going to get your emotions, folks, or what they think is your emotions, digitized, and you don't think that hybrid soldier is not going to sense that, right or wrong? Right now, companies struggle to understand their customers' emotional needs and wants. The government may not care to struggle. Enough here. Your wearables are what I told you they were coming. All this technology was telling us it's here to do this. This is the rudimentary stuff. They're not telling you that it's already happening. They're not telling you that you're going to be part of that cyborg army. You're going to be the ones that are the soldiers. You won't even know it. Big News Brzezinski predicted that the citizen soldier will be undistinguishable from the rest of society because it's all of society. You don't think this new Windows 10 being able to give you upgrades from someone else's computer isn't a network that is able to do and tell on everybody? And you're walking right into this. And another inside player, MIT Labs, is in on it. They create these databases that create these impressions, digital impressions that are going to be fed to people, companies really. I said people will be the hybrid, the bureaucrat, all on biometrics. Most of the time you've given them. Remember I talked about those smart clothes. Your clothes themselves will have these things built into them. The fibers. Remember, I talked about all this material science stuff that was coming to a product near you. I told you Elon Musk is not working on science, a fairy tale. He's working on real things. It looks like he actually, like in California, the lunatic Brown that's down there, the governor, insane people, that they're going to now, the whole of the government's going to give some subsidies to electric cars. Well, who's the biggest recipient for that but Tesla? And the factory there, subsidies to bring on this smart technology, running by better batteries, which is really fascination to me, but still applied to you. Wearable devices reveals consumer emotions. You don't think you're going to be fully wired, folks? You're not paying attention. I also mentioned in a prior broadcast, and that brings up this digital acquisition of information, how they have products for us, and the digital person that they make with all your data that they attach to you. Did get an email, and thank you very much for that if you're tuning in again. Appreciate that. About a thing called, it's already a product, called a digital persona, and it's a fingerprint reader. Well, in writing a response email about that, later it occurred to me that something popped in my mind about digital persona I thought I read a long time ago about it being a software company, not a product. And so I was, again, all this information's been there. The memory hole is full of stuff, and every once in a while something vaguely comes around and I pick up on it. Well, I did some quick research, not a deep research, and sure enough, digital persona was started as a biometric software company. That the software was used by Microsoft in its fingerprint reader. So now it's digital persona, the data information gathering software, has now developed its own reader. So I wanted to know, that's interesting. How did that, so that's what it was. We were told digital persona. I remember advertisements that there was this company that was going to be able to integrate all this stuff for our help, all these biometrics to make things more secure in our life and make things more automatic for us. We would just be able to use our fingers or prints and all this other stuff. Look into a hole. No more keys. Nothing. Buy groceries. Just walk out of the store. Sounds great. Really utopic. Okay. Until you start finding out this is all the tools of war, the weapons of war. Digital persona. And I'm okay. So these people are connected. How do you get into Microsoft as a software? You got to be pretty cool when you're doing that. Now, who is this digital persona? It's not just a fingerprint reader. It's actually a legal entity company that makes software that the emailer told me, and I don't know if I fully understood it completely, that they're going to be upgrading the software now to take more biometrics with these devices. Well, to me, it looked like this device could just do you could just put sensors in it. It would take all kinds of biometric readings. Why wouldn't it communicate with that wearable that you have and start sucking in information there to create your digital persona? The very thing I was telling you, that these digital devices are having identities. You will have your own. And it's like they're getting you to play these games, and you create you look like something in the game that you created up. Well, yours is actually being created for you, and it doesn't look anything like the game that you've created for yourself. It's the one they're creating for you that goes along with everything you do. So what is it, this digital persona? Who runs it? Okay, I did a quick little check. Nothing really fancy here, folks. Richard Agostinelli is he served as executive officer of the president of Digital Persona Incorporated, originating out of Fremont, California. But this is a listing for something called Cross-Match Technologies. He's the chief executive officer of Cross-Match. He started, but he became the CEO, of Digital Persona in 2012, but Digital Persona was started back in 1996. That's about the time I'm learning about this problem, this plan, this international world connection and technocratic imposition. Applying my newfound reading and knowledge and experiences of the international law as applied to us on a global scale, not just in an opinion or because someone said it's a new world order, but because I was reading all the statutes, all the codes that were allowing it, and then realizing about the corporations that were coming in, the public-private partnerships that were filling the needs of the plan. But looking at who is this Richard A. Agostinelli, again, very careful, very quickly, looking at Cross-Match, he's the CEO there. Just looking at the front page, you have to understand what they're saying. Their motto, the world identifies with us. Listen very carefully here, folks. The world identifies with us is not a small statement. Now, I know companies want to promote themselves, but this is dealing in a global structuring and global need devised with weapons for global wars. That their motto is, the world identifies with us. Very catchy. The world is all of you all. Is going to be identifiable by them. Cross-match. And this is now we see the information coming together as a hub. That they use these devices, as I said they have. This is not a secret. Not like I originated. We could just see it coming. That everything that they're offering is to develop the wars against you and the war profiteers. And let's maybe point to where the source of this is. Where might we look? What's the origins of this guy coming in just at the time they need it? Just at the time they need this data integration on something called the digital persona, that is this fictional virtual you, they'll make it you, that you won't understand unless you listen behind the woodshed, how to start to challenge, and how not to avoid it, or to challenge it when it's developed around you. And to limit your exposure to its creation is actually more of what I've been trying to do. Yes, why I have things to hide digitally, and for other reasons. That these people, this cross-matching data on a world scale, who is this guy that comes out of nowhere? Well, I go do a quick research and find out what's his origins, what's his training, where does he come from, this gentleman? What do you think, folks? Just so happens he's trained at Loyola University out of Chicago. Loyola University out of Chicago. Which becomes a very interesting connection to this next report that pops up this week. Loyola University is a Jesuit university. Why are we continually focusing ourselves and originations on people connected to a very narrow group of organizations? And here it is again. I mean, what are the odds, folks, please, really, what are the odds that a global world identity company, management identity company, is involved in creating a digital persona which is used globally to control and track you, which is used to anticipate your future, anticipate where you might be, anticipate what you might want, feed into that for you, so that you're just, if nothing else, you're just dealt with in your pleasure. You're not a factor. That also coming up, the Jesuit University and this guy who now has the pulse of the world's identities in a context that's not very good for the rest of us. We hear Pope Francis' allies accuse Trump White House of apocalyptic geopolitics. You kind of wonder, what? Where does this come from? Why would this even be an issue with Pope Francis, his allies? Well, you know, it's really close to him. He's not here without his voice. They didn't just punt that out without Pope Francis's approval. An article vetted by the Vatican offers scathing critique of Steve Bannon, who is Catholic, the Trump White House, and the evangelical fundamentalism in the U.S. In an explosive article written by two close associates, Pope Francis has accused Steve Bannon, the chief White House strategist, of espousing an apocalyptic geopolitics whose roots are, quote, not too far apart from that of the Islamist extremist. Again, I could keep reading. That starts it off. There's a ton in that first paragraph. Remember, this is coming from an organization that is like the originator of tortures, the originators of the fabrication of heretics, the masters of duality, probably, till it was named by someone, it was probably the progenitor of Hegelian dialectic. That it would come attack one of its own is just the method of how this is starting to work. But don't forget, as I pointed out before, almost all of the Trump administration has what? Who trained most of these people? What universities, what influence universities trained most of the cabinet, but the Jesuit universities or backgrounds? The term Mike Pence says he's an extremist, evangelical Catholic. Evangelical Catholic. That's like an oxymoron. I mean, it's just a new created term. This is the unity thing of the Catholic Church happening. I've talked to you about this. When did I do that, folks? Last year, about this time, when I also explained to you, let's not forget next month, a month and a half from now, when what happens? The very Protestants that are in the White House sign and agree to a treaty with the Catholic Church to reunify the schism that was created by Martin Luther. Isn't this fascinating to you at all, folks? How controlled this whole thing is, and we can focus just haphazardly, by mere coincidence, without a known reason, that one group of his peoples historically are involved in everything I've been talking about so far today. That will use and is within their so-called ethics to make a statement on one side, the same members of which can move against on the other, as long as it advances the outcome, which is the exaltation of this Catholic evil. And some of you will be Catholic, and some of you won't know that. It's evil. This organization is evil. Not your belief, it's your belief of the belief. That you haven't read enough to understand the Jesuits are not a non-entity, a non-player. They also have the ability to make you look at one spot, one hand, while the other hand's doing something else. They're masters at this. I can't even get, I look at the very first paragraph and I can't imagine, all my mind just goes kind of bonkers about all the different things my mind starts coming up with how they've gone and done this, where they attack one of their own to make a question, and then they bring out the agenda and they bring out the issue that they want. And what did they want? But in the second paragraph, what are they after? Coming right into September, but to make the news again of the agenda I told you was coming back last year in July, I think it was. The article of Law Civilta Cattolica, which is vetted by the Vatican before publication, lays out a scathing critique of evangelical fundamentalism in the U.S., arguing that on issues ranging from climate change to migrants and Muslims, proponents of the ideology have adopted and twisted reading Scripture and the Old Testament that promotes conflict and war above all else. Folks, that is the definition of the Catholic Church. How much more twisted can you get the reading that the Catholic Church does? How much more subtle the deception to point out Mary instead of Jesus Christ as the Savior, and what he did to do that and why? How much more twisted does this get to come out and talk about climate change and the migrants and Muslims when the Pope came out with his encyclical? If you'll remember, I've covered all this last year completely. How much more twisted does this get that the Pope supports a fraud that by the day is exposed over and over and over to be the fraud that it is, climate change? That the Agenda 2030 that the Pope embraces does exploit migrants and Muslims in particular, because that's what you see over in the Middle East. What I've been telling you is the mirror, the contorted carnival mirror that it is. They expose this laying of hands on President Trump by evangelical leaders to point out this distinction when Pence said he was an evangelical Catholic. See that they're tying it together by denying its complaining about it. These are the movers and the shakers on these points. This is one of the things that's against us. And you got to be very careful. I say Catholics, remember, they're also heavy into flying the, anti-Semitic flag, and they misstate and twist the definition of what Semite means. It's all the same organizations. This is if you wanted to understand how to deceive, you would look at this organization here. I wrote put out a Twitter, again 140 characters to roll out this conversation. This story came out and I responded, stated that they are. Again, the story comes out to say and accuse Bannon of apocalyptic geopolitics. And I responded, stated by ideological extremists embracing AGW fraud and A2030 exploiting migrants in favor of an is-us occupier. Don't forget, Israel sits there. And I say, hashtag, you are kidding me, right? Do folks not see through this? And if they see through this, why don't we hear more response? These people, I talk about this a lot, not the Pope, the method they use to destroy us. What we talk about consensus, imposed upon you locally. As some good do-gooder rule or regulation or whatever that actually destroys the thing it's purporting to protect or make better. The process destroyed, consensus, the coordination process destroyed that gives the county the power to protect against these nonsenses, destroyed by the policy consensus networking system. the alternative dispute imposition that's already integrated in your states as an administrative destruction to law. This thing, this pseudo discussion against one member of the Trump, is another reflection of what's going on in a town near you. Just change the attack title, what the subject matter is, and it's identical. So they attack someone for the very same things that they themselves are doing and have supported a year before. And I see coming through the stream what's the next celebrity's opinion. I could care less about the administration, Trump, the ban and all that. What you're looking at is a dynamic method that is evidence of the existence of the destruction against you, the war against you. They're getting their way. It's getting fulfilled. It doesn't matter that it sounds like Trump didn't go in Paris. They're actually proving how not getting involved was better. But their rationale is based on how it's relative to the fraud of global warming. I'm talking about the invented consensus one, not climate as in natural climate. These folks are working on a global scale. They're not bashful to attack an administration of the most powerful thug. So you have to wonder who you can't challenge may be the one that has the reins here, folks. This global warming thing that they have on us, another story pops up. How wrong the Pope has got it to impose climate change is evidenced right here. Arctic warms, America cools, how climate systems interact. What have I said, folks? Balance in the environment. Where one place gets warm, another place is going to go cool. Where one gets water, another place will go dry. There's an interaction in the system. A system that denies that the climate change people, Michael man-made global warming, denies the sun. That means they deny the system, that it is being used by the sun, or that the sun drives. A new study from Chinese and South Korean universities has looked into the complex interactions of climate systems to try to understand why the warming of the Arctic has caused more intense and lengthy winters elsewhere. Is all I need to hear that the IPCC and consensus scientists and the Pope are not infallible? Apparently, they don't know, these scientists don't know about climate systems and interactions. Yet they will make rules and policies and condemn a man in a governmental administration for having apocalyptic intentions when they're the ones that are imposing fraud that will have apocalyptic harms put on people, but not in the way that we see in war, and they call it and hide it under geopolitics. No, it's just going to be global. The carbon tax fraud market is part of that the Pope agrees you need to pay for somebody else who doesn't have it. That's shared prosperity right through a 2030. On a fraud, on a system. This next article says that they don't even understand what the complex interactions that they exist and where are they and why. They just know that they are. That's exactly what I told you. This environment is so complex that I don't know that there's enough knowledge about it to build a model that accurately portrays it, that we could even begin to believe we could do any kind of predictions on it. I'm pausing. How is that not something that's really clear and simple to understand, that we've allowed this nonsense to go on and on and on, or we make fun of it and we disregard it? And I'm suggesting to you that this allies of the Pope coming in to attack one of the administration and impose something that science is saying they don't even understand is the thing you're missing and not working against. Because it has nothing to do with climate change. It has nothing to do with the ignorance. It has to do with creating a dynamic in the people, in their thoughts and behaviors, most importantly, that keep them out of the way that the plan is fulfilled. I mean, how can you make a policy, a climate policy, global nonetheless, predict a future into the 2100, when you don't even understand that there are complex interactions and climate systems to analyze, and you haven't done it? Isn't anything different I haven't said before, but over the years they still don't do it, and no one just brings that out. We always want to argue instead of just denouncing the myth. We want to just argue instead of just saying, well, your hypothesis isn't even valid. It doesn't even raise the level actually of a hypothesis. No, we engage it. We continue to engage it. Trump may not have signed the Paris Treaty, but he did not denounce this condition. In fact, the Pentagon is actually studying how climate change will interfere, but may impact them. Now, I understand the weather might, but not climate change as a defined, consensus-born ideology. A theology. See, this is all a theology if you kick it down. When the Pope is saying climate change, that's a theology. When he's talking about migration, that's a theology. No, it's a problem, and it's the plan. And I've talked about this over and over and over. It's official impeachment resolution against President Trump. So this some guy, Brad Sherman, he puts out an impeachment because of some obstruction of justice charge. My only response to him on Twitter was, now, Brad Sherman, if you don't go after the actual obstructing government riffraff, you're a hypocrite. If not accessory, 18 U.S.C. 3 and 4, I have a list. So, folks, I start the question. I expose the conundrum to his artificial intelligence and his plunder to attack the system by not attacking the system, and we focus on the wrong thing when, in fact, these are the players that are causing this problem against us. Maybe you can join me on that Twitter line and say, well, yeah, once we have an answer, or you are a hypocrite. More importantly, you are the accessory to the crime when you don't do what those two statutes say. Do we have even that much of a word in our mouth? Letters in the ink pen to a piece of paper? Can't we even do that for ourselves? Can't we just make a record so that everyone can see we're doing something more than just yakking about it, and then it does go nowhere? Self-fulfilling prophecy? Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said will invigorate you into taking action on some of these issues. Make a decision to stop a wrong you need to be righted. Grimner, thank you for what you do. RealLibertyMedia.com and all the stuff in the archive and things like that. And freedomsnetwork.com social network. Folks, use that as a tool. Get together. We can all somehow get together and work it out. Jules, I did see the recast up in the YouTube. Thank you. I hope you're feeling much, much, much better, and hope you get that all handled. I hope that does work out for you. I was glad to see that happening. And folks, I'll be here next week. Tech diffs or nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.